Good morning. We will pay attention to analysis and interpretation today, and special attention to solvency. Solvency refers to the extent that the assets, that is your total assets, current and non-current assets, exceed the total liabilities, current and non-current liabilities. Then the balance sheet is available for us so that we can do this solvency ratio. Now, if we look at the balance sheet, you will see that the total assets are not given. But we know that according to the accounting equation, assets equals equity plus liabilities. Assets are not provided. We know that the assets must be equal to the equity and liabilities, and the total at the bottom is your assets plus liabilities. So that is the figure that we will use as the total assets. To do this ratio, you must take total assets and divide it by total liabilities. So we will use these figures at the bottom of the balance sheet as my total assets, and to get my total liabilities, I will use the non-current liabilities and I will use the current liabilities. So I will take the total assets as 7183 divided by 2015 liabilities, that's 1980 and 1080. The total assets will then be 7183. The total liabilities is the 1980 plus the 1080. So if I add them together, I get the total of 3060. And when I do this calculation, my ratio is 2,421. So that means for every R1 that the business owes, they've got R2.40 assets. If we look at 2014, the total assets will be 4717. We will calculate the total liabilities again, adding the 700,000 and the 1377 together, and that will give me a ratio of 2,3 to 1. So there was a slight improvement from 2014 to 2015. From 2,3 to 1 to 2,4 to 1. Although this ratio is satisfactory because the company have R1 debt for every R2.40 in assets, you should still compare these figures to the policy of the company to see if it's satisfactory, and you must also compare it with a ratio of competitors. If we just look at the ratio, then this company is solvent because the assets are higher than the liabilities. If the ratio was not satisfactory, the following measures could be implemented. You could pay off your debt if the cash flow position would allow you, so that you don't have the debts anymore, or you should finance your assets through the equity. So instead of obtaining a loan, you should rather issue more shares to provide the capital that's needed for the company. It is very important to distinguish between solvency and liquidity. Solvency is the ability of the business to pay off the total debts, where liquidity is the ability to pay off its short-term debts. Solvency is the degree to which the total assets exceed the total liabilities. So how much more do you have in assets than in liabilities? The liquidity is the degree to which the current assets exceed the current liabilities. So the solvency is always on the total assets and total liabilities. Liquidity is on the current assets and the current liabilities. If you think of liquid, it's water flowing, and that's the same with the liquidity. It's the assets, the current assets that change every day, and the current liabilities that change every day when you have a transaction. Non-current assets plus current assets will be divided by non-current liabilities and current liabilities. And in the liquidity, you will take your current assets and divide it by the current liabilities. What did we learn today? Solvency refers to the total assets, so that's current assets and non-current assets, and the total liabilities, current and non-current liabilities. So it's the extent to which the total assets exceed the total liabilities. Although the assets are not given, you can use the accounting equation to determine the total assets. The total equity plus liabilities equals total assets. Solvency is the ability to pay all your debts, so the total debts or the degree to which the total debts exceed the total liabilities. Liquidity is the firm's ability to pay short-term debts, so that is the degree to which the current assets exceed the current liabilities.